Hey folks, David Tao from BarBend.com, and today we're recapping the action from the 2023 Rogue Invitational in Round Rock, Texas. We're going to cover three big divisions today: the men's side for CrossFit, the women's side for CrossFit, and the Strongman competition, which was men's open competitors, so pro Strongman competitors in the heaviest division. But before we get into that, make sure you subscribe to BarBend on YouTube. And if you want really in-depth event-by-event breakdowns, we've got all that, including a full leaderboard for all three divisions at BarBend.com. Context on the Rogue Invitational: it's sponsored by Rogue Fitness. Not super surprising there. The Rogue Invitational has become one of the hallmark events in strength sports over the last few years. There's the CrossFit side, the Strongman side, the Legend side. Rogue is really building a cool brand around this competition, or at least a brand with a lot of staying power, so a lot of eyes are on. And if you're a fan of multiple strength sports, we are at BarBend, obviously, it's why we started a site about it, you get to follow along with athletes from several different sports at once. Now, we don't know if there are any plans to introduce additional divisions or sports to the Rogue Invitational in the coming years, but the synthesis of CrossFit and Strongman is pretty nifty and a really spectator-friendly combination. As far as following along, we were pretty captivated all weekend at BarBend, not gonna lie. Strongman, CrossFit, right in our wheelhouse. You can find full recaps of every event and the full competition for every division at barbend.com and at the link in the description below. But let's break down the winners from the CrossFit competition. All right, on the women's side in the CrossFit portion of the Rogue Invitational, look, all eyes are on tia-clair Toomey. She missed this year's CrossFit Games because she gave birth just 5 or 6-ish months ago, depending on when you're watching this video. We do know Tia trained through most of her pregnancy and got back to training pretty quickly after giving birth, but the question on everyone's mind was, how quickly can she bounce back? Is she actually going to be a threat at this competition? She literally just gave birth about half a year ago. I mean, in the calendar year 2023, she did that, and she basically put any questions to rest. Tia-clair Toomey is back. She is at the top of her game, or at least at the top of the game, but Tia-clair Toomey didn't quite win. Laura Horvath, the reigning fittest woman on earth, who won the CrossFit Games this year, again, a CrossFit Games where Tia did not compete as an individual, well, Horvath was able to edge out Toomey to take the crown, and it is Horvath's second Rogue Invitational victory in a row. Horvath, who's from Hungary, put on a super consistent performance, including 3 event wins. She finished with 780 points, and Toomey finished with 770 points. Emma Lawson finished in 3rd. I do want to point out that Toomey actually started off the weekend with an event victory, and Toomey and Horvath were tied in points heading into the final event on Sunday. Now, had they ended up tied in points overall on the weekend, Horvath actually would have won because she had the best tiebreaker. She had the most event wins. But Toomey and Horvath were going neck and neck. Toomey actually led for part of the weekend. Again, she won the first event out of the gate, and she looked great. Maybe not quite as dominant as during the middle of her stretch of 6 consecutive CrossFit Games championships, but she's still a force to be reckoned with in a stacked field. So yeah, Tia-clair Toomey, she's back. She's automatically a threat for next year's CrossFit Games. Is this a rivalry now? Horvath scoring a win over Tia-clair Toomey when Tia had been undefeated for so many years in CrossFit competition. It's a pretty big deal, and honestly, it makes next year's season really exciting on the women's side. All right, it was a heavily Canadian podium on the men's side. Patrick Vellner finishes in 1st place. Jeffrey Adler, also from Canada, who won this year's CrossFit Games, finished in 2nd place. And Roman Krenikov finished in bronze medal position. Brent Fikowski, also from Canada, just outside the podium in 4th place overall. Ricky Gerard of Australia makes his return to competition after having to sit out a portion of last season. He finished in 5th place overall. Also worth noting that Fikowski and Krenikov actually tied in points, but Krenikov takes the edge and finishes in bronze medal position because he had better tiebreakers. These were tight divisions on both the men's and women's sides. Laura Horvath beat Tia-clair Toomey by just 10 points to take 1st place overall. Patrick Vellner beat countryman Jeffrey Adler by just 20 points to take 1st place overall. It was a really exciting competition, and I think the format and length really a lot shorter, about half the events of what we're normally used to seeing at the CrossFit Games, almost makes each event a little bit more impactful. It led to tighter races, and I really enjoyed following along with this weekend's action. I thought it was pretty spectator friendly because you were actually able to track things over the course of 3 days, and it wasn't so much of a slog. I mean, the athletes seemed like they could go out and give it their best. To be honest, toward the end of some CrossFit Games iterations, you do see athletes really start to be ground down, injuries accumulate, nagging pains, fatigue. But this is really exciting. The athletes were clearly giving it their absolute all until the very end. So I really like this year's competition format. Super exciting to watch on both the men's and women's side for the CrossFit division. All right, let's talk about the strongman portion of the Rogue Invitational. At the top, more Canadian dominance. They had a really good weekend. Mitchell Hooper, the reigning world's strongest man, was consistent throughout the weekend, and he comes away with a win. Tom Stoltman, a former two-time world's strongest man, finished in second place, and Mateusz Kieliszkowski of Poland finished in third place overall. It's a really important and good return to form for Kieliszkowski. He has had a number of injuries and withdrawals over the last few years. About 4 to 5 years ago, we saw him as a big podium threat at basically any competition he entered. And then it's not like he dropped off the face of the map, but those injuries piled up. He took some time away from competition. He had those withdrawals. Great to see Kieliszkowski, who is truly a fan favorite and a bit of a static monster when he wants to be, back on the podium, back in really good form. Next year's men's open strongman division could be one of the widest, broadest, most exciting fields we've ever seen across competitions. Oh, also, Thor Bjornsson has his sights set on returning. So yeah, there is a top dog in men's open strongman. It's Mitchell Hooper of Canada, but there are like 10 competitors who on any given day have a really good shot at making the podium, maybe even winning. Super, super exciting time. Well, that wraps up the action from this year's Rogue Invitational. Again, if you want full, really in-depth to the event coverage, check out the link in the description below. We cover all that on BarBend. Until then, I'm David Tao. Thanks for tuning in.